Hey guys, it's Evan with Evan K Exotics, and today's video is called How Hot is Too Hot for Your Boas and Pythons, and Why I Don't Usually Weigh My Snakes. And so, one thing you might notice is that I'm sitting here in a dark room, all the shades are covered, everything's down, and the reason why is because we're actually having probably the hottest day of the year, likely the hottest day of the year up here in Maine. If not, it's going to be one of a couple of the hottest days of the year, and this is actually a hotter day than we see yearly. Actually, we don't always see 97 degrees in Maine every year. So that being the case, this morning I knew it was going to get really hot, and 97 degrees outside ambient temperature is, in my opinion, too hot for boa constrictors. I closed down all my windows early in the morning because I wanted to get as cool as possible in the middle of the night, and I closed them down, and I closed down all my blinds for thermal gain. I turned off all my bulbs so that the ones that are just on, on a timer, they're not kicking on, adding extra heat in here. All the thermostats have shut down all my heaters in my cages. But the point being is I've had this discussion with some people over time is what's ultimately too hot for a boa, both like acutely and long-term what's too hot for a boa. And I don't know what is acutely too hot for a boa. Like if you got a boa to this body temperature for an hour, would it die? I don't know what it is, but I will just tell you that I'd be pretty uncomfortable with this room getting any higher than 90 degrees Fahrenheit ambiently. And the reason being is because the animals can't get off of that heat. If the entire cage if the coldest spot is 90 degrees in here, the heat's going to not be running in these cages, but it just means that they're sitting in 90-degree temperature and they can't get off of it. Even though these animals live places that get incredibly hot, they have much more options to escape, burrow down, find water, go really deep and find a wet hole or something like that to escape that heat. Whereas in here, they're pretty much confined to the boxes. So if you think it's 90 degrees, I don't know that 90 degrees is going to acutely be detrimental to them, but I am very concerned about any ambient temperature over 90 degrees in this room. And I will tell you that if this room was 97 degrees, I don't know for sure. I don't know that anybody's actually played this experiment, and I'm not going to do it with my animals. But if this room hit 97 degrees and was a solid 97 degrees for a day, I think you might see some issues in these snakes. Maybe not even dying, but I think you'd see some heat-related stress and whatnot. So other than just trying to completely control the temperature and keep it from running away by closing up early in the day, closing my blinds, turning down all my heaters so they're not taking extra heat in here. The other thing I did is I went through and I sprayed all these animals down so that they're very, very wet. It's both playing the fact that high temperatures allow me to have a really humid air, and sometimes this is a natural cycle. I'm catching that. The other thing I did is I turned the fan off, but I'm going to crank the fan back up. I'm running both fans in here at full speed, so it's just creating a lot of air agitation, hopefully creating some sort of evaporative cooling in here. But so far we are at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is kind of the hottest part of the day, and right now this room's at 82 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty darn warm in here, but that's definitely within the realm of reasonable. So that's just what I'll tell you guys is that's my opinion of what's too hot. And I think long term, if your animals couldn't get off of had an ambient temperature that was warmer than 84, 85 degrees long term, like we're talking consistently for long periods of time, I think you might start to see heat-related stress too. But those are the kind of two things that I think about. That's just, if you're asking my opinion, that's not one based on experience or evidence that's practiced in this room, because it's not an experiment that I would run personally. So that's just what I say. The other thing I want to mention to you is kind of an explanation of why I don't usually weigh snakes, either as newborns or as adults, and that's just because it doesn't have a ton of utility to my processes in this room. And so kind of the thing that made me think about this, and I don't even think it's a bad thing to when people ask about that, but I had a couple of people recently ask me about the weights of snakes. I had somebody post a picture of a runt Childers python. They asked me what the weight was, and I was like, I don't know. Actually, I kind of wish I knew now, just out of own curiosity. But I don't know how much that thing weighed, but I'm going to say a few grams, 2 to 4 grams. And then I also had a couple of people reach out to me after they bought snakes and ask for like its newborn weight and whatnot. And I just simply don't weigh my snakes as a matter of course. I don't, with newborns and things, like it's not like something that like when they're born I weigh them and then track their weights. It's just not part of my processes. I've never had a situation where I wish I had those. I will tell you the times that I will grab weights on my snakes. I will grab a weight on my snake if I need to medicate it for some reason, or I won't. The vet will grab a weight on it. But I do have a pretty good idea of what my snakes weigh. I do have a shipping scale that I can weigh all my snakes with, and a gram scale that I can weigh the small ones. But the places where I'm most likely to weigh a snake is one of two situations. The first one is if I have a snake that's on a feeding fast, or if I have a baby that hasn't fed. So if I get a litter of babies going and 90% of the babies have already taken the feed and there may be one or two that haven't fed, I might grab a weight on them there so I have a baseline weight and I can track that weight loss over time. And so what that kind of does is it informs my ability to say, all right, we are now getting to the critical stage where this animal is starting to noticeably lose weight due to its refusal to eat, and I need to escalate my tactics or consider force feeding. But so one situation where I might grab a weight is if I have a group of babies or an individual baby that's giving me a particularly hard time eating feeding, I might grab a weight with it, especially if the rest of that litter has already taken off eating. It will usually mark the weight of that one. And the classic example here is I've taken in a bunch of non-feeding Dumerals boas from people that just couldn't get them started. I immediately grab a weight on them, and I will track that weight for 6 months. And it might take me 6 months to get them to take some meals, and it might take me a year to get them consistently feeding where they're feeding as much as they should be. And what you'll actually find is over the course of like 3 months, you don't see a lot of weight loss for quite a while. Like these animals, especially like slightly larger animals, they can hold out longer as newborns that haven't fed. And what I've seen with Dumerals is that they really don't lose weight for 3 months, 6 months, even if I'm only doing 1 or 2 meals in them over the course of that time. They just don't lose weight. So that's something I'll tell you that might help your situation. And the other thing that I'll take a weight on is if I suspect that an animal is losing weight, oftentimes it's a question about whether I want to feed it more or not. And I've just had situations over time where I'm like, I'm not sure if this snake is losing weight for no good reason or actually just growing. It's kind of hard in the moment as a frog in water to see the actual progression of length. And one of the things I will do is I'll grab a weight on the snake, and if I see the weight going backwards, then I know that I will have an issue. I've only had that happen once with a snake in all my years, where I actually tracked it and saw that it wasn't, even though it was looking visually thinner, it wasn't still gaining weight because it was getting longer. It was just stretching. I've only had one time where I tracked an animal that I suspected was wasting, and it actually truly was wasting. Every other time it was stretching, but I had one time where the animal was wasting. That wasn't one of the indicators of why it was that I thought it was sick. Ended up fully vetting it, and I ended up euthanizing that animal because of not because of weighing it, but because of its health issues. But that was one of the quantifiable ways I could tell that that snake had a health issue, if that makes sense. So those are just kind of the reasons why I might weigh a snake. Other than that, I just don't weigh snakes. I don't have historical weights on them. If you purchase a snake from me, and after you purchase it, you want me to tell you how much it weighs, I'll happy to weigh it for you. But please don't try to email me asking what the weight of the entire litter is. I just don't have that. But yeah, it's not to say that it's wrong to weigh your snakes. I just don't do it. I've never seen it being necessary in my processes. Take care. Bye-bye.